Looks like Jeff Bezos just dropped a bomb at the Washington Post headquarters. He wants them to report on freedom and liberty and free markets. They don't know how to do that. We're going to tell you all the juicy details on that in just a moment. Plus, Jake Tapper is just too precious for words. Apparently, he's got a new book out explaining the cover up behind Joe Biden's mental and physical decline at the White House. Is it just a self-portrait? Is he in the hot dog suit? We're trying to figure out who's responsible for this. Seriously, Jake Tapper? Are you serious? Also, Scott Jennings has some truth bombs for the CNN panel about the White House Correspondents Association. We'll give you all those details. And you'll never guess the secrets the folks at the NSA are keeping from you. Tulsi Gabbard fired about 100 of them for some pretty nasty stuff. And we'll dive into it. Not too deep, though. Otherwise, we're going to have to bathe in bleach. That's all coming up right now, live. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. I don't know if you've seen the news or not, but economists right now are forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by the year 2030. This is because we got this perfect storm right now, Social Security and Medicare hitting a breaking point all by themselves. And then you've got the largest generation hitting retirement basically at the same time. You got a smaller workforce. That means a smaller tax base to pay for those things. That plus the growing national debt, the rising cost of living. We have a problem, all right? And I know you're waiting for the politicians to fix it. How's that working out for you? And you need to do something right now to protect your family for the future. Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times. Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, to 989898. Here's what you're going to get when you do that. You get a free info kit on gold. You're also going to get a free book. It's called The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era. Forward of that book is written by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation. We're just giving you information here. You like information. You're smart. So text my name, Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, to 989898. Do that today. Jeff Bezos owns Amazon, as you know, and he likes to shoot rockets up into space. Maybe he's got a little rocket envy with Elon Musk because Elon bought Twitter, turned it into X, and it's a bastion of free speech, and it's fun. So Jeff Bezos, after buying the Washington Post, he sort of dwelled in the whole swamp creature kind of Russian collusion BS that sort of ruined journalism going forward. And today, he let all those reporters, all those journalists, all those editors, all those people at the Washington Post that work for him, he let them know that things are now about to change. He then published that email on X, ironically, and we all can see exactly what the Washington Post reporters read when they woke up this morning. Here it is. I shared this note with the Washington Post team this morning. I'm writing to let you know about a change coming to our opinion pages. We are going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others. Let me just pause there for a moment. Think about that. This is the Washington Post. This is the paper of record in Washington, D.C., we're told. And it's a huge change. It's a huge shift. It's a huge 180 turn for that newspaper to now be writing about, what's this again? Personal liberties and free markets. Aren't those sort of foundational principles of the United States of America? Why is this even a shift? Why do you even need to write this email? But of course, well, you know the answer to that question. Washington Post has actually been focusing on everything but personal liberties and free markets. And Jeff Bezos apparently has had enough. Either that or he can just read the room and he can tell where the wind is blowing. And, well, he's letting his own newsroom know exactly which way the wind is blowing from his direction. There was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every morning a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. one quick pause here, by the way. The implication here, or the inference, is that the Washington Post was doing that the Washington Post was offering a broad-based opinion section. No, they weren't. Up until a few moments ago, their conservative writer was Jennifer Rubin, right? They weren't offering a broad base of opinions. It was always slanted in one direction. They only allowed a certain kind of Republican right there, and certainly never a pro-Trump Republican or an America First Republican, or by any other definition, a conservative Republican. All right, back to Bezos. I am of America and for America and proud to be so. Our country did not get here by being typical. And a big part of America's success has been freedom in the economic realm and everywhere else. Freedom is ethical. It minimizes coercion and practical. It drives creativity, invention, and prosperity. I offered David Shipley, whom I greatly admire, the opportunity to lead this new chapter. I suggested to him that if his answer wasn't hell yes, then it had to be no. David Shipley is the current editor-in-chief of the Washington Post. He said, here's what we're doing. We're going to be focusing on these two pillars, right? Personal liberties and free markets. Are you on board? Editor-in-chief of the Washington Post, champion of the First Amendment, pretty important personal liberty. Are you on board with me, David? Is your answer hell yes? Because if it's anything but hell yes, the answer is no. After careful consideration, David decided to step away. This is a significant shift. It won't be easy, and it'll require 100% commitment. I respect his decision. We'll be searching for a new opinion editor. Oh, excuse me, he's the opinion editor, not editor-in-chief, to own this new direction. I'm confident that free markets and personal liberties are right for America. I also believe these viewpoints are underserved in the current market of ideas and news opinion. I'm excited for us together to fill that void. Jeff. Wow. Wow. I mean, you talk about a vibe shift since the election and since the inauguration and since the advent of an America First agenda on steroids that we've seen from President Trump and the entire Trump cabinet. I would have never in my wildest dreams thought this was possible, that Jeff Bezos made this kind of shift with the Washington Post. And if you think this isn't a big deal, well, just take a look at the reaction from one Philip Bump. Philip Bump, one of the opinion writers at the Washington Post, who apparently has an issue with personal liberties and free markets. That's his reaction. Philip Bump, by the way, spent the last 4 years as an apologist for the Biden administration, running interference, claiming that there's nothing to the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, claiming that Biden is absolutely fine, 100% great capabilities. He's the best president we've ever had. Philip Bump has decided that if the opinion page that he writes for is going to be focusing on personal liberties and free markets, well, that's his contribution to the conversation. It'll be interesting to see if anybody actually hires Philip Bump if he can't handle this. I mean, wow. A little bit more here. Jeff Stein. Now, Jeff Stein is the chief economics reporter for the Washington Post. That's how he describes himself. And he shared a screenshot of the email. There it is. Imagine working at the Washington Post and getting an email from Bezos, Jeff. By the way, good to know that we all now have Jeff's email address. If you want to reach out to Mr. Bezos at the Washington Post, it's jeff.bezos@washingtonpost.com. That's jeff.bezos@washingtonpost.com. Maybe I should send him my resume. I'd love to write a few op-eds over there now, if this is really the direction they're going. You see, this is the email. It's the exact same language that Bezos shared. And Mr. Stein, the chief economics reporter, not just any economics reporter, but chief. I think that means that he wears a headdress with feathers. He says this is a massive encroachment by Jeff Bezos into the Washington Post opinion section today. Makes clear dissenting views will not be published or tolerated there. I still have not felt encroachment on my journalism on the news side of coverage, but if Bezos tries interfering with the news side, I will be quitting immediately and letting you know. Noted. And I hate to do this, but I wrote a book about this. It's called Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. I didn't predict this, but I do spend a couple of chapters at the very beginning laying out how we got here, how freedom of the press was first imagined by our founders. And I spent a lot of time in one chapter talking about the myth of objectivity. There was a time right up until about the late 19th century in America where newspapers didn't pretend to be objective. They didn't pretend to not take a point of view. You had newspapers owned by Mr. Pulitzer. You had newspapers owned by Mr. Hearst. You had newspapers owned by various interests. And the consumers, us, we, the citizens, the voters, the people that freedom of the press is actually there to protect, we would know which newspaper was which, right? We knew that if we bought this newspaper, it was owned by a guy who had, conservative principles and was aligned with the Whigs, let's say, or later in the 19th century, the Republican Party. Whereas if we bought this newspaper, we knew that it was a guy who was aligned with the Democrats. He was pro-slavery, this guy, because he's a Democrat. That's how we, the consumers, used to consume our news. This whole idea of objectivity, it's a myth that was created by the newspaper owners when they put together a thing called the Associated Press. They pooled their money together to save when they had to send reporters to cover the Spanish-American War down in Mexico. They didn't want to spend money to send each and every reporter, so they created a thing called the Associated Press, and the dispatches they would send didn't have any political bias, so that the newspaper owners could use them in their collective respective newspapers. There's no such thing as a newspaper owner not injecting his opinion and his direction onto the content of the paper that he owns. We see this right now, by the way, in cable news, right? Rupert Murdoch is a political conservative. Now, he's from Australia and he lives in New York and London, so he's not, a conservative like you and I are. But Rupert Murdoch hired Roger Ailes to create a cable network that would better reflect conservative ideas because one didn't exist anywhere. That's how Fox News was born. And we, the consumers, know that when we turn to Fox News, we're getting news and opinion from one perspective. And if we turn to MSNBC, we know that we're getting it from another perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. The Republic did not fall apart or get shattered. See, these guys hide behind this myth of objectivity and treat it as a costume, as a camouflage, as a disguise. They claim that they have no point of view or perspective. No, we're all about just the facts. But then the second their owner says, well, this is what our opinion page is going to be, they all go ape. And it's a great reveal. It tells you exactly who they are, actually. It tells you that it was all a lie to begin with. There was no objectivity there. They just hate the fact that their owner now specifically says, this is our point of view. This is our perspective. I own this sandbox. You want to play in my sandbox? You play by my rules because they're my toys. In fact, it's my sand. In fact, it's my box. You can always go somewhere else if you'd like. That would be one of those free market principles that Jeff Bezos wants them to talk about. You know who's really hurting because of this? Sadly. Not only the people who work at the Washington Post, but also this guy. This guy is a social media influencer. And by the hairless chest, you can tell that he is a liberal. Kamala Harris loving liberal. This isn't the Harry Sisson guy, right? Because honestly, I don't even think Harry Sisson has girly pecs like this guy does. But there you go. There's his manly hairless chest. And you see he just got a brand new tattoo. This brand new tattoo is fresh. He's showing it off. Let's zoom in on the tattoo that he just got right there. By the way, tattoo on the rib cage, that can be painful, especially when it's kind of big like that, a little expansive. He must have had some tequila before he got it done. Let's zoom in on that tattoo that he just got on his rib cage, shall we? Ah, yes. Ah, yes. This absolute moron literally got the Washington Post's virtue signaling, hysterical left-wing anti-Trump motto, democracy dies in darkness, which, by the way, also happens to be a complete and total fraud. He got that tattooed on his body. It's like getting the Hillary Clinton I'm with her logo tattooed. Oh, we're going to shatter the ceiling. There's no way Hillary can lose. Dude, I wonder if can he modify this and make it something else? right? Maybe he could expand it and turn the pillar into maybe, I don't know, the barrel of a gun. I don't know. But it's a bad day for him as the Washington Post takes a little bit of a shift. Yeah, it's not your father's Washington Post anymore. It's not your Watergate Washington Post anymore. It's not your Russian collusion Washington Post anymore. The opinion page is going to focus on two principles: personal liberties and the free market. In other words, the Washington Post is now suddenly, apparently, going to be an American newspaper. As you know, we're not big fans of Jake Tapper over here. There's no one who likes to bust his arm trying to pat himself on the back for being a real journalist, one of the last real reporters. He likes to furrow his brow and get very concerned about things that go on in Washington, D.C. that Jake Tapper doesn't approve of. That's why we were delighted to see that Jake Tapper has a brand new book out. Take a look at the cover. It's quite something. It's called Original Sin. And it's now available for pre-order at originalsinbook.com. No, it's not about the Garden of Eden. It's not about Adam and Eve and the serpent. Although there is a little bit of evil shrouded in this Original Sin book. The subtitle, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again, by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. I'm sorry, is this an autobiography, Jake? The cover-up? The cover-up of Biden's decline. Jake Tapper participated in the cover-up of Joe Biden's decline. Jake Tapper is Exhibit A when describing what happened during the cover-up of Biden's decline. And now he's acting like, I was shocked to learn that Joe Biden wasn't fully cognitively aware. I didn't know anything about this until the moment I sat on that stage at the debate in June 27th. Been working hard on this with Alex Thompson. Alex Thompson, by the way, national political reporter for Axios and CNN contributor, also a participant in the cover-up. I'm guessing that Alex did most of the legwork on this book, considering he's a reporter and writer, and Jake Tapper at this point in his career is just a guy with a good haircut who can read a teleprompter. Been working hard on this with Alex Thompson, from interviews with more than 200 White House insiders, Dem leaders, and more. Hashtag Original Sin book. I think there are some other alternate titles we can have here. Original Sin. Original Sin suggests that this is the first bad thing that happened, that led to this cascade of horrific events, right? That's what the original sin was. We're all now broken and fallen because of that original sin. And I guess the original sin was denying Joe Biden's decline in health. Original sin. How about we call this the straw that broke the camel's back? How about this, the final nail in the coffin? Because this isn't the beginning of a problem, Jake Tapper. This was the end where we had all reached our limit, where we all decided, no, we're done with you people because you've been lying to us. You lied to us about Russian collusion. You lied to us about COVID and the lockdowns. You lied to us about the vaccine. You lied to us about Trump's felonious crimes. And you lied to us about the Biden presidency, not just about his failing health. You lied to us about the Afghanistan withdrawal. You lied to us about the economy and inflation. You lied and lied and lied to cover him up, to cover it up and make him look good. And you call this original sin? No, this was the end of a whole string of lies, Jake Tapper. And by the way, I have proof of that, specifically to you, Jake Tapper. Here's Laura Trump. This is during the 2020 presidential campaign. Not this last one, not 2024. This is when we all saw Joe Biden campaigning from his basement. We all saw Joe Biden at a rally, unable to remember people's names, incapable of being able to quote the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. Each one of us with life, liberty, and, you know the thing, right? That Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who wandered aimlessly on the stage. Joe Biden, who was incapable of running for president in 2020. But you see, Jake Tapper and his pals, they had an election to win, and they couldn't let Trump win 4 more years. So they had to lie and prop Joe Biden up. So here comes Laura Trump on Jake Tapper's show, and she points out the obvious, the thing that we can all see about Joe Biden's diminished mental capabilities. And here's Jake Tapper, the Praetorian Guard, doing the work for the Biden campaign and the Democrats.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are
to
no.
watch somebody on stage
It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think
stuttering,
that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive decline.
That Joe Biden
I have
is
one last
struggling
question for you, Laura. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay,
that is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel sorry for Joe Biden.
I appreciate.
There you go. Interrupting her midstream, not letting her finish her statement, repeating the lie about the stutter. We've seen Joe Biden for the last 50 years. He's got a pretty good track record and public profile, Jake Tapper, going all the way back to 1972. And he never had a stutter. And here's Jake Tapper running interference for Joe saying, oh, you're making fun of his stutter. What? And yeah, by the way, he did concede that there have been plenty of people who have diagnosed Donald Trump and his mental capabilities. Guess where they did that? On CNN. So that was Jake Tapper in 2020. And now here's Jake Tapper, the hubris, the arrogance to come out here with a book called Original Sin, where he's now going to get to the bottom of the cover up. The book should have a picture of Jake Tapper on the cover. With like this. It was me. I did it. Here's another example. This is Jake Tapper promoting a book called What It Takes by Richard Ben Kramer. It's published in 92. And he's pointing out all about Joe Biden's stutter, right? Again, running interference. Here he is. There's 4 pages here. He took a picture about Joe Biden, right? Says, see, people like the one below who brandish their ignorance as evidence of something else. This is back when Jake Tapper was trying to explain. See, he's had a stutter. We've all known about the stutter. We've all seen the stutter. This is a book written in 1992, all about the stutter. It's the stutter. It's the stutter. There's no stutter. And even when we saw all of the problems with Joe Biden during his presidency, during the campaign as well, as you just saw with Laura Trump, but all through the presidency, what did the White House tell us? Well, that's his stutter. He's had a lifelong stutter. Don't make fun of his stutter. And now here comes Jake Tapper. Here comes Jake Tapper, the champion of truth, the champion of unvarnished and unbiased reporting with his book. He's profiting from this. Saying, I'm going to get to the bottom of the cover-up. Jake, you were the cover-up. Here's another example. Our friend, this is Savannah Hernandez. She does viral videos. Fearless young woman. Turning Point Action, as you can see from the branding there. Here she is, seeing Jake Tapper on the street during the 2024 campaign. I think this is during the convention coverage in Milwaukee, the Republican convention. This is before Joe Biden dropped out, by the way, but it's after that debate, where Savannah Hernandez asked Jake Tapper a very simple question. Why did you participate in the cover-up of Joe Biden's decline?
I'm here at CNN. I can't get very close to them because their security guard is blocking me. But we've got Jake Tapper here. We've got Chris Wallace. We also have Dana Bash. Now, I've been asking them why they have been lying to the American public about the mental decline of Joe Biden. None of you guys would like to respond to that at all? No? Dana, you're a very respected journalist. Jake, not so much respected, but people listen to you still. Would any of you guys like to respond to Joe Biden's cognitive decline and why you guys lied to the American people about it for so long. Can you please take your hands off of it? So there you guys go. That's the media. They refuse to answer the questions of the American people. I'm here to see.
There you go. They didn't have anything to say then. Yeah, he should have said, listen, Savannah, I'd love to talk to you, but I'm writing a book about this right now, and I hope to profit off of our lies. I hope to profit off of what we did here, so I'm not going to give you anything for free. That's your great journalist, Jake Tapper. Listen, guys, you have a choice here. You can buy Jake Tapper's book. You can buy his spin. You can buy his lies. You can give him money to tell the story about how everybody covered up, how the media participated in the cover up of Joe Biden's decline. Or I've got an idea. You can buy my book, Shameless Liars, how Trump defeated the legacy media and made them irrelevant. Because if you look at the table of contents here, you'll see that I've got chapters about this very thing. I've got chapter 4, the worst president of all time. That actually shows, before we even get to the health issues, all the things in the Trump presidency that they ran interference for, that they didn't challenge, that they didn't ask questions about, that they let happen. And by the way, once again, one of the biggest part about these shameless liars is that if anyone on the center right perspective, like this show or talk radio or any other podcaster, when they raised it, not only did they lie to cover it up, but they called us liars. They said that we were propagandists, because everything they accuse us of is what they did. Then I've got chapter 5, cheap fakes and the Biden decline. Remember all those videos that showed Joe Biden? We highlighted them right here on this show, that showed him wandering aimlessly off stage, or frozen at the Juneteenth concert, or frozen on the stage with Obama at the fundraiser in LA, or wandering off at the G7 summit. We were told that those were deceptively edited, cheap fake videos. That was all through June of 2024, 1 week before the debate, where it all came crashing down. Chapter 6, Biden falls and he can't get up. That really covers the debate and the aftermath as they try to spin and accuse other people of lying about Joe Biden. And then chapter 7, the Kamala coup, where they ended up handing her the nomination. And of course, nobody in the media ever discussed that and the plot behind that. I'm waiting for Jake Tapper to write that book. Maybe Dana Bash will do that one. Buy Jake Tapper's book if you want to lie. Buy my book if you want the truth. Either way, this is despicable of Jake Tapper. He is the absolute worst. As you know by now, the Trump White House has decided to put an end to the White House Correspondents Association monopoly on picking which outlets get to come into the president's pool. These are the outlets that get to come into special places like the Oval Office or on Air Force One or other press avails. By the way, you can cover the White House without even being in the White House. Lord knows I cover the White House all the time, and I'm not sitting in there. And by the way, I'll get to some more details about the White House Correspondents Association in a moment. Last night, the topic came up on CNN, Abby Phillips, a panel discussion, and Scott Jennings did what Scott Jennings does best.
Who is a longtime foreign correspondent. He covers the White House for the New York Times. He said, having served as a Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign, this reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access.
Okay, can we just address this dictator business? I'm going to quote from some statistics put together. So our old friend Chris Cillizza, who calculated that in the first month of the Trump administration, the president took 1,009 questions. Hardly dictatorial behavior. Same stat for Joe Biden, 141. And I would remind you all that in 2023, the Biden administration revoked the hard passes of 442 journalists. And at the time, the White House Correspondents Association took, quote, a non-committal stance. So if you're worried about transparency, Trump is being far more transparent than any recent administration.
Why were their press passes revoked?
I don't know.
Was it because they didn't go to the White House frequently? Because
I don't know. They lost their access.
That happens in every
They lost their access.
Besides,
So
442.
Biden people never called on James Rosen from Newsmax. And
Yeah.
He's a real legitimate
But James
reporter. They
Rosen
never called on him.
was allowed in the White
press
House.
Oh, look at Abby Phillips running interference for the White House Correspondents Association. Great point about James Rosen at Newsmax, by the way. You know why James Rosen never got called on for 2 years? Because at a press briefing with Joe Biden, he cited a poll from that morning in Politico that said the majority of the American people, this is in 2022, the majority of the American people didn't think Joe Biden was cognitively capable of being president. And by asking that question, a very newsworthy question that reflected the majority of Americans' opinions about the president, because he asked that question, they refused to call him in again for 2 years. And what has Abby Phillips said? Well, at least he got to go into the room. Wow, what a champion of journalists that is. What a champion of the First Amendment that is. Well done, you, Abby Phillips. Yeah, Donald Trump has answered over 1,000 questions in his first month as president. Because, you know, there's one thing about Donald Trump that I think we can all agree on. He hates talking to reporters. He hates taking questions from reporters, this guy, right? He just likes to hide there, you know, in his little cave in the White House. He doesn't want any reporters coming in. That's certainly true of Donald Trump. The president of the White House Correspondents Association is Eugene Daniels from Politico. He put out a scathing letter about this. Let's read it together, shall we? This move tears at the independence of a free press in the United States. It suggests the government will choose the journalists who cover the president. In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps. He's not choosing the press corps. He's choosing which reporters on a rotating basis get to come into the press pool to cover certain locations like the Oval Office around Air Force One. By the way, he's not excluding anyone. All they've done is open up and expand the press pool to outlets that had been excluded by whom? By the White House Correspondents Association. That's the irony here. He's including more reporters that had been left out by Eugene Daniels, the president of the White House Correspondents Association. Also, the White House Correspondents Association was founded, I think, in 1920 or something. How on earth did we have a First Amendment and freedom of the press before the creation of the White House Correspondents Association? How on earth did any reporter or any newspaper cover the presidency before we had a White House Correspondents Association? It's also been a recent development. I mean, 50, 60 years maybe, but that's relatively recent when you've got a country that's 250 years old. It's been a recent development that the White House Correspondents Association has been responsible for the things that they are now stripped of responsibility for. And they have earned being stripped of that because they've lied to the American people during the Biden presidency. They said nothing when individuals were censored on social media over the COVID-19 lockdown and over the Hunter Biden laptop. What did the White House Correspondents Association say when the Biden administration censored the Hunter Biden laptop story? What did they say? Did they come to the defense of the truth of the New York Post reporters who covered the Hunter Biden laptop story? No, they didn't. They have earned the right to be removed from this equation. That said, let's go back to Eugene Daniels. For generations, the working journalists elected to lead the White House Correspondents Association board have consistently expanded the WHCA's membership and its pool rotations to facilitate the inclusion of new and emerging outlets. Really? Did you ever let Breitbart in? No, the answer is no. Breitbart News has been covering Washington, D.C. for 15 years. You know how I know that? Because I was there on day one. Andrew Breitbart hired me the first week of Big Hollywood, his very first website. I mean, I worked for free for a year, but it was worth it. Then he put me on the payroll. I was the 7th person on the payroll at Breitbart in the early days. We were working out of Andrew Breitbart's basement. And over the course of the last 15 years, Breitbart has been built into a juggernaut. And they never once were allowed into the White House press pool. White House Correspondents Association kept them out the entire time until now. Since its founding in 1914, the White House Correspondents Association has sought to ensure that the reporters, photographers, producers, and technicians who actually do the work 365 days of every year decide amongst themselves how these rotations are operated so as to ensure consistent professional standards and fairness in access on behalf of all readers, viewers, and listeners. Yeah, do you feel like you're getting fairness, accuracy, and professionalism in the output of these pools? Or do you think maybe they can do better? I think they can do better. To be clear, the White House did not give the WHCA board a heads up or have any discussions about today's announcements. Yeah, you know why? You know why you didn't get a heads up? Because you would have leaked it. You professional sons of guns. You would have leaked it. Because you have no professionalism and you have no standards. But the WHCA will never stop advocating for comprehensive access, full transparency, and the right of the American people to read, listen to, and watch reports from the White House delivered without fear or favor. That's Eugene Daniels, president of the White House Correspondents Association. In case you didn't know, that's Eugene Daniels right there. He may look familiar. He covered the Kamala Harris campaign on behalf of Politico while he was still the president of the White House Correspondents Association. There were rumors, I think very well-founded rumors, that should Kamala Harris have won the election, he would have been the press secretary for Kamala Harris. He was a very high-profile guy during that campaign. Wrote quite uncritically about Kamala Harris. Nice suit, by the way, pal. What are you doing, an endorsement for Pepto-Bismol? Oh, by the way, right after he put out that article, that letter, I should say, on behalf of the White House Correspondents Association, talking about their professionalism and their fairness and their unbiased reporting of the White House, he also then put out a personal note, as you see here from the Daily Caller. He's leaving Politico. What's his next gig? He's going to host a new show on weekends for MSNBC, because nothing says fairness, professionalism, and unbiased reporting like MSNBC. You can't make this stuff up. It's like they hand it to us on a gold platter, not a silver platter. This is a gold one, baby, because it's so obvious what they do. Let's swing it back over to CNN now. Here's Brian Stelter. Back at the time, he had the gig as the media editor for CNN. This is 2021, and the topic of conversation: should Fox News continue to be part of the White House press pool?
There are, these questions about Fox's, as Fox radicalizes and as it becomes even more and more of a political tool. Zerwick, you wrote a column recently for The Sun about this, saying Fox should be viewed as a political tool. And that raises a question. Should it be a part of the White House press pool? Should it be afforded the privileges that come with news gathering? Even though they do have some news reporters at the White House, you're saying they're primarily a political tool. So should that be reassessed, Zerwick?
Listen, I really do. I think it's a discussion we need to have. Look, you're not supporting democracy. You're not supporting the larger values of this culture. They don't even stand up as a opposition party, but there's nothing journalistic in what Lachlan Murdoch said. And you know what? I say, hey, you know what? Let's take them at their word. Let's not let them on the plane. You want to let the Proud Boys on your plane, on Air Force One? No, I don't think so. These guys are doing the same thing.
There you go. Those people right there, I don't know about SE Cup, but everybody else on that picture right there, proud members of the White House Correspondents Association, or at least the companies that they work for. See, these are guys on this media roundtable on CNN. Look at Brian Stelter, what a potato. Openly discussing keeping Fox News from being able to cover the Biden presidency because they're radicalized and they're too political. So back then it was okay to have that conversation because, you see, they were the gatekeepers. They ran the White House Correspondents Association, so they got to say who got into the room or not, who got to be part of the club or not. They're the gatekeepers. We live in a brand new world now, guys. We don't need you to be the gatekeepers anymore. Amazing stuff. And Scott Jennings, by the way, just scratched the surface on this last night. He had a stellar evening. I want to show you a couple more clips. Hey, is Abby Phillips, is she doing she's doing the JD Vance look. Look at that. That's uncanny. Someone needs to clip that. Someone needs to put that right next to, I don't really care, Margaret. That's a beautiful look. Good for you, Abby. Little trying to cozy up to JD Vance. It's not going to work. All right, take a look.
It's hard to do.
I have an idea for them. Why don't they cut the $15 billion that Musk has received in federal funding? I mean, if
what would
he
you like
cares,
to cut specifically?
I would.
Him rescuing our astronauts, giving
it's
internet
not
to
about
Ukraine?
no. Wait, no. He's not rescuing our.
Hold on. So Elon's programs are fine, but everybody else's programs.
No, she said she wants to cut him out of the government. He does a lot of important things. I'm just asking what you want to get rid of. We need a space program, I think.
We're not talking about a space program. I'm talking about how Elon Musk, the wealthiest person in the world, is in the federal government making decisions about grants and about funding whenever he benefits from those things. He has people in a number of government agencies. Yes, it is true, including the FBI, in order to find ways to gain grants and to make more money. And are you okay with that? Is that something you're okay with?
well,
You're
I
for
think-
cutting.
I think
You're
you're-
for cutting, but you're not for cutting
A, I think you're full of it. B,
I'm not full of it. I have sources at the FBI.
he provides all sorts of services to the
Scott,
government.
just a second. We just
I do love that. I think you're full of it. Scott is so good. But let me. Can I just point out something, because that 1 minute clip there actually points it out even best. The biggest problem with this show here is Abby Phillips. Did you notice? So here's Scott Jennings going toe to toe with the former spokesperson from the Democratic National Committee and a person aligned with Hillary Clinton. You would think that she was fully capable of being able to make her case and argue her point head to head across the table with Scott Jennings. But Abby Phillips can't shut her yap. She has to jump in there. She has to double team. She has to start fighting with Scott Jennings. She's supposed to be the moderator of this panel discussion, but she constantly cuts off Scott Jennings. She constantly teams up with the other people on the panel to go after him. That was a perfect smoking gun example of it. Just get out of the way, throw the topic out there. You brought these people to the panel to debate the issue. If this lady is not capable of towing the Democrat line, then don't bring her back. But why? She doesn't need your help, Abby. All right. A little bit more, though, actually. This was a different panel discussion on a different show. This was back when they were attacking Elon Musk on Inauguration Day. Okay. But this was, again, all this attacks on Elon Musk. Jennings is great at.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question? Did Joe Biden have staff at the White House, and how many of those staff members were elected?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me set this up better. I apologize. The video that they're showing is from Inauguration Day. This is taking up the issue that it's been revealed that Elon Musk would be sitting in the cabinet room today during the first cabinet meeting, and everyone's going crazy about that, right? Which makes no sense, because there's always, I'm sorry, last time I checked, Jill Biden, the wife of the president, was sitting during the Biden administration during cabinet meetings. But that's what this clip is about. I apologize. I set it up wrong. Go ahead.
Sorry. Can I ask a question? Did Joe Biden have staff at the White House, and how many of those staff members were elected?
Well, but Scott, Elon
zero.
Musk
The answer is zero. Every president appoints people to do things for them. To call him unelected is like the most naive and ridiculous talking point I've ever heard.
Scott, I can't believe you would believe something like this, because if this was Joe Biden allowing for a billionaire,
allowing people who weren't elected to run the country for the last 4 years, yeah, I would believe that, actually.
Throwing another coup like January 6th.
I would believe it if Joe Biden had unelected people running the government for the last year, maybe the last 4 years. Yeah, I believe every word of it.
You wouldn't be up in arms, Scott.
I was up in arms about it.
I think there's a difference if it was George Soros. I think that the example is not, obviously everyone has unelected people in that they appoint. The difference is if it was George Soros.
George Soros does have influence over Democrats. He collects your people like Pokemon cards.
That's a great line. God, honestly, he collects your people like Pokemon cards. And again, a perfect example of the CNN host jumping in there and running interference, because look at it. It's already 2-on-1. You got two Democrats against Scott Jennings. But then the CNN host has to make it 3-on-1 because they're incapable of arguing the point. Of course, they're incapable of arguing the point because it's very hard to defend a lie. And that's exactly what the lie was. I mean, imagine if Joe Biden had a very rich person influencing the government. Scott Jennings is like, have you ever heard of George Soros? Have you? Maybe, perhaps, now and again. And Elon Musk is doing more than just putting money in here. He's actually doing the hard work that even Democrats concede needs to be done. They've been promising to do it for decades now. We're going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. You heard that a lot from Obama. You heard that from Biden. You heard that from Clinton. Now Elon Musk has been tasked to do it as a person who reports directly to the president and to the director of OMB, Russ Vought. He's actually doing it, and they're going nuts, which, by the way, proves that they never meant it in the first place. All righty, Scott Jennings. Have you ever wondered what happens over at the NSA, the National Security Agency? I mean, we hear a lot about surveillance and about stuff they're doing, and I have no doubt that the majority of people over there are keeping us safe, protecting us from terror attacks and other kind of attacks. NSA was sort of rejuvenated and formed to do the job that they're doing right now after 9/11, when Homeland Security was sort of reoriented. We created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence so that all of these intelligence agencies could talk to each other because there were firewalls put up before. That's why the 9/11 terrorists were able to sort of happen under the radar, because the FBI wasn't able to share information with the CIA. So we got this whole new infrastructure now. So what really goes on behind closed doors at the NSA? Well, we got a glimpse of it from Christopher Rufo, investigative journalist. He's the guy who brought down CRT over there and the woke agenda and DEI over at Disney. He got that leaked video of a Zoom meeting that showed producers of children's programming saying that they're allowed to inject queer storylines into the shows, and no one at Disney ever said anything about it. Yeah, that's Christopher Rufo. And now somebody has leaked to him, well, some pretty tawdry things over there at a chat room. Now, this is like if your company uses Slack or maybe a Google Chat or something else to have a workspace, well, they have a secured workspace server for various conversations over at NSA. And apparently one of them, well, as you can see, NSA and CIA officials expressed their desire to have hermaphrodite babies in order to advance trans ideology. An intersex birth would be a great opportunity to raise a kid as non-binary and let them choose later. Yeah, it's a whole chat room. In fact, there's a couple of them dedicated to employees of the intelligence agencies exchanging information about transgender issues, transgender procedures, and transgender fetishes, and various other sexually oriented topics. And we're told that this was allowed because you can't just like start your own chat room on these things, right? You got to get permission from supervisors and management to be able to do it. And ostensibly they did, because if the management at NSA said, no, it would be inappropriate in our workplace to have a chat room dedicated to these topics, well, then you weren't being inclusive. You weren't being diverse. So you have to do this, which is ironic, because if you're in the workplace and you have a conversation about any other kind of sexual issue that doesn't involve that stuff, well, you'll get called up to HR. You can't say that. You're creating a hostile work environment by talking about sexual issues on the job. You know, if I compliment a coworker's hairstyle, or I say, that's a really pretty dress, you look good in that dress, I'm done. I'm fired forever and unhireable. But, you know, you can talk about your hermaphrodite sex and your fake body parts like they did in these chat rooms at the NSA. And not only is it fine, it's encouraged. Christopher Rufo also found another chat room, or within the same chat room, where the conversation moved from kinky sex fetishes to politics. And apparently in this chat room, NSA, DNI, and Spacecom officials said that Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of national intelligence, is, quote, fervently anti-queer, a Russian agent, and a member of the MAGA cult. These are employees, including at least one person who goes by they, them. Although, how do we know it's one person? It is they, them. I love that. This is how they've warped our language. Christopher Rufo says, including one they, them. By definition, a they, them is more than one. So I'm already calling a conspiracy here on this. They, them are attempting to undermine Gabbard from within. Now, if you know anything about Tulsi Gabbard, she ain't going to stand for this. And she saw this story. She immediately sent out a memo to all employees at the NSA and across the intelligence community saying, I want to hear by Friday exactly who these people are. I want them identified. There will be accountability. Last night, Tulsi Gabbard, your director of national intelligence, appeared with Jesse Waters.
Well, Jesse, what we're going to do has already been done. There are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in this, what is really just an egregious violation of trust, what to speak of like basic rules and standards around professionalism. I put out a directive today that they all will be terminated and their security clearances will be revoked. But the thing here, Jesse, is like, we got to take a step back because this is just barely scratching the surface. When you see what these people were saying, and thanks to Chris Rufo for putting it all out online, they were brazen in using an NSA platform intended for professional use to conduct this kind of really horrific behavior. And they were brazen in doing this because when was the last time anyone was really held accountable? Certainly not over the last 4 years, certainly not over the last 10, maybe 20 years. When we look at some of the biggest violations of the American people's trust in the intelligence community. So today's action in holding these individuals accountable is just the beginning of what we're seeing across the Trump administration, which is carrying out the mandate the American people gave him. clean house, root out that rot and corruption and weaponization and politicization, so we can start to rebuild that trust in these institutions that are charged with an important mission of serving the American people, ensuring our safety, security, and freedom.
Love that. Also love what's the character in X-Men? Is it Mystique that had the gray stripe there? It's so good. Good for her. And she's right. It's all about accountability. It is about the previous regime. Also, one other thing, as she said, thanks to Chris Rufo for uncovering this. Chris Rufo is an independent journalist who operates out of his home in Seattle, Washington, not Washington, D.C., the Washington all the way over there on the West Coast. How is it that not one of the reporters and journalists who always get leaks here in Washington about Trump, right? Think about all the anonymous leaks from the intelligence community about Donald Trump and about Russian collusion and about a Ukraine phone call and all these other things that were designed to bring down the Trump presidency. And not one of those journalists, not one of those reporters in Washington, D.C. had contacts in the intelligence community that would leak this information. This stuff had to go all the way over to Christopher Rufo. It's amazing, isn't it? Isn't it amazing how all those journalists who cover the intel community didn't know anything about this, or they knew about it and they just didn't think that it was newsworthy, which probably tells you a lot about them and their news agencies. Speaking of which, Tulsi Gabbard wasn't done. She had something to say about one of those news agencies that live and die on anonymous leaks from the intel community. This would be, I think you're familiar with them, CNN.
There's going to be a lot of house cleaning because now we're hearing CIA agents don't like getting Doge, so they're going to sell state secrets to our enemies. What are we going to do here?
I am curious about how they think this is a good tactic to keep their job. They're exposing themselves essentially by making this indirect threat, using their propaganda arm through CNN that they've used over and over and over again to reveal their hand, that their loyalty is not at all to America. It is not to the American people or the Constitution. It is to themselves. And these are exactly the kind of people that we need to root out, get rid of, so that the patriots who do work in this area, who are committed to our core mission, can actually focus on that. I got to tell you, one of the byproducts of what I just saw literally today is because of this immediate action of transparency and accountability, I have people within the intelligence community reaching out to me personally and directly saying, hey, you need to know about this. You need to look over here. People are stepping forward because they are all on board with the mission to clean house and refocus on our core mission of serving the American people.
I love to hear that, that there's a lot of patriots that want to join you in.
That's great. The fact of the matter is there are a lot of people who work in the intelligence community, in the military, in the Justice Department, in the FBI, and frankly, in the federal government at all levels who really do love this country, who, by the way, are America first, believe it or not. And they welcome this brand new agenda. They welcome this oversight, and they're going to be participating. How do you think those screenshots made their way to Christopher Rufo over there in Seattle, Washington? Great job by him. Great job by your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And yeah, from that interview last night with Jesse Waters to this headline in the New York Times this morning, Gabbard says more than 100 intelligence officers fired for chat messages. Chats have been set up to discuss sensitive security matters, but a group of employees used it for discussions that contain sexual themes, intelligence officials said this week. There you go. Accountability and results. I know you're not used to that, but I'm getting used to it. It's kind of fun, actually. And thank God we're finally getting what we've been wanting for decades, what we've been voting for decades. But sadly, oftentimes, the president of our choice, after making lots of promises, didn't really deliver. But so far, this one, looking pretty good. All right, that's it for our segments today. We're going to interact with the chat in a moment. And I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but you should really buy my book because today, especially today's news cycle, more than ever, you'll like it. It's an easy read. It's Shameless Liars. It's got my name on the spine, and it's got endorsements on the back, by the way. Can you see that? Governor Scott Walker, Ambassador Richard Grinnell, Mark Levin, Sean Spicer, and Molly Hemingway. Some pretty good endorsements. All right, let's get to the super chats. Yoanka Padron for $9.99. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Yoanka. I hear Padron and I think tequila. So let's go, baby. I appreciate the $9.99. I think maybe we'll spend it on tequila. I appreciate that, sir. Angela. Oh, our angel. We've missed you, Angela. I'm sorry. I took a few days off. So thank you for coming back here. $2 super chat. Did USAID pay for Jake's publishing? For all we know, right? It's amazing how much of that USAID money ended up going to media outlets. So they may have, but I think it was published by Penguin. I bypassed big publishing and I self-published this book because I wanted to walk the walk. And I did not want to enrich any of these publishing houses who were part of the problem in the big media. So this bypasses all of that. Money goes direct to the author, the artist, and to my children's college fund. All right. That's it for today. That's a wrap. Hey, we did it in under an hour. We've been trying to make the shows a little trimmer, a little sharper, a little more succinct, and a little more to the point. And I think that we did that today. Appreciate you guys so much in the live chat. Don't forget to like this video. I think there's a lot to like in this one. So give us a thumbs up right now. I'm waiting. I'm not going to go anywhere until I see it. There it is. Thank you. Thank you for the like. Thank you for the subscribe. And if you can, share this video, and segments of it will be shared a little bit later on the platform you're watching right now. And when you see that segment, go ahead and share it on your social media pages as well. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.